on the planet. You guessed it, dads. This is Ask a Dad.
What should I do if my kids won't come when I call them?
Turn off the Wi-Fi and watch them all magically appear.
Will my children ever let me use the bathroom in peace?
Yes, when they move out of your house.
When we're playing sports, should I let my kids win?
Absolutely not. It's not your fault God bless you with incredible athletic talent.
Why is there peanut butter on the back of my couch?
Why are there Legos in the fridge? No one knows.
What if my kids don't think I'm cool?
It doesn't matter, because deep down all dads know that they are so cool.
How come nobody laughs at my amazing dad jokes?
Because you're doing it right.
Why can't my kids remember to do their chores?
Because that part of a child's brain is reserved for remembering all the things you hoped they'd forget.
Why won't my children listen to me?
What?
How do I get my kid to eat dinner?
You look them right in the eyes and you tell them you are going to your friend's house for dinner. Problem solved.
As a dad, how can I dress for success?
2 words. Cargo shorts.
Happy Father's Day to you dads in the house. Welcome to Community of Hope Church. So glad you're here today. If you're not a dad, it's okay. We get one day, just one day. And so we want to, we're going to do something a little different today. I get a little bored with a couple of songs and me. I had one person step into it after first service. It was like, I didn't even fall asleep today. And I'm like, oh, thanks. I appreciate that. So I have invited a couple of friends, a couple of my best friends actually. And we had lunch about a month ago and I said, hey, would you guys want to join me on Father's Day? Just to talk about being a dad and a father. So if you're not a father yet, if you're a mom, you're never going to be a father, it's okay. I think what you'll hear today at 9:30 went pretty good. 9 o'clock went pretty good, I thought. Better than I thought. Chris asked me, is that what you thought? And I'm like, I don't know, because I didn't know what I thought. Going to invite him to come up. Chris Leone. Give Chris a hand. Chris is our next gen pastor, our student pastor. So and then my other friend, Brian Wilson. Not that Brian Wilson. Not the beach boy, Brian Wilson. Brian led worship for Community of Hope Church for about 16 years. So if you're newer or new-ish, you may not know Brian. Some of you might know him really well. Met Brian over 2 decades ago. Yeah, long time ago. And so we're going to talk about dads, being a dad, or our dads. So I thought I'd throw a little trivia. Anybody know where the Father's Day thing comes from? You can Google it, by the way. It's what I did. So Father's Day is celebrated around the world, by the way. It's not an American holiday, although we've Americanized it. It was originally, I believe, Italian, or at least in European holidays, celebrated on March 14th, I think is the date. It's called Papa's Day. And it was to celebrate Joseph, the stepfather of Jesus. So that's where it all got started. Believe it? That's what Google said.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't drill down.
Nice.
But I'm pretty sure that's what it is. So people usually just believe me. They don't fact check me.
Is that a dad joke right there?
I love that. The dad joke. That was the funniest thing to me was the dad joke because none of you laughed. I thought it was hilarious. So we're going to start with Chris. And 2 questions we're going to talk to you about today is the first one is this: how our dads impacted us. So in our kind of growing up days, our formative years, how our own fathers, and we all have radically different stories about our own fathers, how our dads, impacted us positively or negatively, like we do. And then the second question is some of the things we've done well as dads with our children, and maybe some things we thought we could have been better at. Because there's no perfect people, by the way. How many dads? Give him a hand. Give those dads a hand. Any of your kids come with a playbook? No. We're all just trying to figure this thing out. Doesn't matter if you have grown kids, little kids, no kids. It's all trying to figure out. So we're going to start with Chris. So you got the floor.
All right. So as far as dads, looking back, I realized that my mind had to kind of be reshaped as to what a father was. From 0 to 6, I grew up in the foster system. And one of the reasons, I actually got reconnected with my biological father at one point. And then he did something pretty awful with me actually present. And so when he was taken to prison for that, we were put back up for adoption. And then I ended up getting adopted by an amazing couple. And my little brother's in the back too, because he's staying with me for now. But the cool thing is, I didn't realize, not the cool thing, this is kind of messed up. Overall, my dad was an amazing guy. And I didn't realize it until I became a father. And now, having to, coach fathers here and there and talk to fathers, I tell them, don't worry, your kids one day will realize how awesome you are. It might just take 20 years. So, stick with it, right? Instead of just giving up. But my dad was such a great godly example. He, from an early age, I saw how hard he worked to connect people to Jesus, to disciple people, to put God first. And a couple things that stand out about him. One thing was he had to make a tough decision at one point, and he had to choose between my sister and my mom. And biblically, your wife is first. And so I saw him live out God, wife, kids. No parent ever wants to have to make that decision, but he did. And he did it well, and he did it gracefully. And then another thing I saw was his commitment to my mom, again, in a different way. My dad was a man of integrity and great character. And so one of the things that he did is he vowed that he would never be alone in a room, in a building of any kind with a woman. 42 years of marriage. Didn't matter if it's a supervisor, somebody he's counseling, he was never alone with the opposite sex in 42 years. That's pretty awesome, don't you think? That's a commitment. That's integrity. He didn't want there to be blurred lines. So I saw this lived out before me, just a man of God who put God first and put his family second. And I would say it was kind of contagious that I'm like him, probably a lot different approach to it. But I saw, my brother's here, he can attest that one time I had surgery as a young kid, and my dad stayed up all night. That way, every 15 minutes, he could push the button, so I was pain-free. Again, at the time, it's like, well, that's your job, you're a dad. Now that I'm a dad, I'm like, I ain't staying up. Right? If that's the option, it's like, can I get some of that too? I'll sleep better probably. I'm joking, but it was awesome to see that my dad, just such a selfless, godly man that lived it out before us.
Your dad's in ministry too, right?
He is. My dad's in ministry. Never got paid for it. Is the backbone of his church, in my opinion. Is probably the best preacher that congregation has, including the pastor. Again, in my opinion, hopefully Johnny's not watching this. That's his pastor's name. But he's a great Bible teacher, great just counselor, a real wise man. And at one point, they needed a sound man, so he went to a tech school, got trained to be their sound guy for their church. So he's just that kind of guy, just selfless, sacrificial, and yeah. And they're probably going to move here soon. Very happy. Yeah, right now so July 7th, my dad will go preach at Coolidge Church, and then that might be where they end up. So 45 minutes is a lot better than 12 hours.
Joe. I grew up in my grandfather was a minister here in Arizona, in Coolidge, actually. Grew up in it, so I was I grew up with that. My dad grew up with this legalistic viewpoint, which was passed on to him, which he passed on to me.
It's funny how that happens.
It's a gift. Anyways, as I kind of grew up, my folks were really young. I'm the oldest of 3 kids, and my folks were really young. Didn't have a clue what they were doing, and so my dad was. I got beat a lot. I was an angel child. I don't understand that.
Me too.
It's crazy. But anyways, we had a paddle that would hang on the wall basically, and man, that thing would fly off the wall pretty quickly. And so there was always these, it always felt like our relationship with these, they would do something or he would do something and there were strings attached. And if I didn't answer or do or dance this way, everything blew up. And so trying to navigate that thing, and I remember thinking, you know, one day he and I, this relationship's going to change. We're going to be friends. This is going to be this awesome moment when I arrive to this level that he needs me to be or whatever else. And it just never came. It just never came. And it, quite honestly, it was therapy afterwards. I think I just built it up so much to where this is unattainable type of thing. And then I remember the counselor was saying, you know, if you had a person that was in a wheelchair and they're, you know, paralyzed from the hips down and they can't get out, you know, is your love going to get them out of the chair? And I go, I don't think so. Same thing with your dad. And I went, huh. That was a pivotal moment for me. And so there was these goofy things for me as I was growing up with my dad and mom, but he was trying to do the best that he can. My dad, you'll tell the yours, but my dad was very uneducated. I think he maybe made it to 8th grade, maybe. I think he has a reading dyslexia or something as well. But at the same time, I remember as a kid, and one time he really tried. He did try. He got the Bible, and he was trying to read the Bible to us and tell us, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about here. And it was so far over my head, but he was trying to do it. He's a guy that felt like he should have been in church ministry or something like that, felt that, but never could make it and never tried and stuff like that. And so anyways, there was just always this arm's length relationship that I kind of had with my father. It just drove me just awful. And there was that, I think Erwin McManus even talks about that, the wounded heart of their sons and stuff like that. And I just found that very, very interesting. But does my dad love me? Absolutely. Absolutely, and he tries. And so we kept going, and then we decided to go into business together, which was, there were some knockdown dragouts. I mean, I kid you not. I literally said, Dad, I believe this that a crazy blue sky today. And he goes, no, that's gray. Are you? I don't know what you're seeing. And we look at things differently. I mean, we just look at things differently. But there's things that he's taught me is, sounds awful. I didn't want to be like that. And so I swung clear over to here, trying not to be that. I mean, I can see it. If somebody is passive aggressive with me, I know it exactly. And I go, nope, I ain't living that way. I'm not living that way. I'm going here. And so there's some little things that my dad has showed me in a backhanded way, but my dad does love me. He really does, and he's a champion for me. He really is. He tries in a goofy way. I don't get it sometimes. I'm like, why would you do it that way? That seems so odd and awful. But that's just the basis of where I was growing up at.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about this at 9 o'clock too. One of the things we don't realize when we're young children is that our fathers are broken. They come from brokenness. There's this generational I call it messed upness. We all bring our own baggage and our own inability to parent and our own brokenness into our families. And we do the best we can. And I told Brian this story at 9 o'clock. He'd never heard it before, but when Brian started leading worship for us, he much like his father, he came down and said, "I'll do it. I'll just do it. I'll be here. I'll work hard." And he worked very, very hard and put in a lot of hours, never wanted anything for it. And a year or so into the church, the Community of Hope Church, Brian's dad pulled me aside one Sunday and said, "Hey, I am going to begin to tithe." And he gave me an amount, and he said, "I want you to give this to Brian." And you'd never heard that.
No.
So he does love his son. And as dads, I think sometimes we just don't know we don't know what we're doing. We're doing, we're trying, but we fail a lot. I failed a lot. My dad, my earliest memory of my father was when I was 3 years old. And it was a bit traumatic. I have a lot of trauma around my dad, but I was 3 years old. My dad was, again, he had a bad heart his entire life. He was born with I don't remember the name of it, but his heart was basically backwards, flipped. And so he was born 30s, I guess, 40s. And he was sick his entire life. They told him they told my grandma and grandpa he'll never live to 18. So they pulled him out of school, at a young age, so he never finished high school. He met my mom, my mom's family had a farm out in Buckeye, and so he started working for the farm. He was a great mechanic, tractors, trucks, those kinds of things. And I was on a tractor from the time I was born, and these were not tractors of today with cabs. These were just, seats, open tractors. But 3 years old, my dad was in the shop. I don't know what he was doing, but he obviously didn't want me around, and so he sent me out to the yard where all this equipment, he lived on a farm, all this equipment. And I had climbed up on a small tractor, not a lawnmower, but just a small tractor, and the key was in the ignition, and there was no safety features at this time. This was 1964. And I knew enough I'd ridden on these tractor with my dad, and so I knew enough, turn the key, the tractor starts. Well, I turned the key, the tractor started, it was in gear. And so it started moving. And I don't remember what happened between that point and me running into a cotton trailer, but I had heard stories that people had seen me from across the street, like, why is that little kid driving that tractor around the yard? And I ran into a cotton trailer, and it kind of pinned me in there, and the tractor was geared really, really low, and it didn't shut off. The wheels just kept turning. And I have this vivid ministry of dirt flying into the air. Like the tractor stopped, and dirt's just flying, and I jumped off. Tractor's still running. I jumped off. I remember running through the dirt. That's a weird memory, isn't it? Screaming, "Dad!" And I remember seeing my dad come out of the shop, and my memory is he was just like super cool about it. Like, "Don't worry, son, I've got this." And I'm just like, I almost died. And he was just like super cool, super chill. My dad was, again, not educated, super hard worker. I remember him working really, really hard. He worked on the farm. And I was telling somebody in between services that he had open heart surgery in 1976, I believe. I was in 8th grade. He went to Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. It was cutting-edge open heart surgery at the time. He was in that hospital for months. And when he came home, he finally came home months later, and he was never right again. The surgery, he could never recover from the surgery. And so he was super sick. And I had these memories of being, every time I left home, I was afraid that when I came back home, he would not be alive. He was that critically ill. I was telling a story to somebody afterwards. I remember one day we were out, I was probably 14-ish. We were out somewhere because he was working. Here's my dad. He's critically ill, and he's out working on the farm, and he, I don't know, we irrigated, and you have to jump the ditch, right, to get on the other side and my dad fell into the ditch. He fell into a ditch. And I remember trying to, got him out, put him in the car, drove him home. Here I am, 13 years old. I mean, it was dirt roads, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. I was still driving at that time. Nice. And, he was just super, super ill, critically ill. And he finally succumbed to this in my freshman year of high school. I remember, I think I told this story not too long ago. It was a Saturday morning. I remember the phone ringing and my mom answering the phone and hearing her crying and coming in telling me that, Dad had lost his life. And so I didn't have a dad in a real critical time of my life, kind of that high school-ish. For those of you with kids, that's very formulative in our lives. That middle school, high school, you're trying to figure out who you are and how you're going to act. And again, my mom had to live. She was a single mom. I have no brothers and sisters. So it was a real traumatic time for us in our lives. And it messed me up. I'll just put it that way. It severely messed me up emotionally, mentally. Not my dad's fault, by the way. It happened, and I internalized a lot of that inappropriately for a long time. Did not really grieve my dad until I was 35. Lost him when I was 14. So I had a 20-year period there where, went off the rails a bit. But a good counselor, brought me to a point where I could finally, be mad, because that's what happens when you're a parent. You get mad and then be sad, and then finally just, let him go. And really, really kind of turned my life around as an adult from that point, because I just he wasn't around. And not his fault, but as a young kid, you don't know. I mean, you don't know. You just don't know. So I'm just gonna kind of circle back like I did at 9 o'clock.
How did that make you go into therapy after that and stuff like? How did that make you a better dad? Did you notice that? What was that trigger there?
Instantly. So I was at that time. My daughter Sydney was 2, and I didn't get it. Most of us don't. Okay, I just didn't know how to be a good dad. I had a lot of ideas about what that might look like, but most of them were fairy tales. And I think a lot of us kind of live in that idealization of, I'm going to go to work and, make money and Lisa will take care of the kid and, I'll watch TV and play softball and after that moment I realized no. And Lisa used to tell me, I would go, okay, I'll babysit tonight. And she'd be like, you're not babysitting, you're parenting. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a dad. It really helped reframe me as my kids were, and then Grady was born about a year after that. But again, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know, because I didn't have the reference point for it in my life. And a lot of us don't, because anybody have perfect parents? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to figure this out. A couple of things I did. I think I did you'll have to ask my children. Maybe they'll tell me at lunch. I was way off base here. Because we came down here. My kids were kindergarten and second grade, started the church. And so my time was flexible. And so I feel like I got to spend a lot of quantity time with my kids. I never missed a game. I never missed a Cub Scout meeting. I never missed a dance recital, a play. I picked them up from school. I took them to school. I was quantity-wise, I was with them. I took them camping. I didn't say this at 9 o'clock. Every summer, I would take my kids camping, just me, usually over Father's Day. Nice. Somehow I framed Father's Day as the day I parent, not you get to play golf. I don't know why that is, but it's like, no, you parent your kids on Father's Day because you're a dad. You get to be, it's probably Lisa in the back telling me that. You're a dad. You get to be a dad. So I spent a lot of quantity time with them. But, we were starting the church, and I can be a little distant, like any man. I tend to check out occasionally. And so I may have probably didn't give them the quality time that I should have invested in them, emotional quality time. And it's because it takes a lot of work. To be quality emotional time with your kids takes an immense amount of work. And if you don't know what you're doing, it's really, really hard. So that probably could have been better. But as we kind of reflected this morning, I love my kids are awesome, by the way. My kids are grown. My daughter has a little girl. almost 2 years old. My son was in the Marine Corps for 4 years. He's currently going to school full time. He works full time, and he's a dad full time. The kid that couldn't put a cup away to save his life. When they told me they were pregnant, I'm like, oh no, you can't do this. I didn't tell him this. I just said congratulations, good luck. But he's a really good dad. My daughter is a really good mom. They love their kids. They're really hard workers, and I think we passed that on to them. They've both been. They're probably watching eventually. They've both been in counseling. I would say the number one thing you can teach your children is this: it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to get help.
Yeah.
Just like, did you just say this with the wheelchair thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's okay to let your kids know, I'm messed up. I made you messed up. Go get help. Right? I mean, that's better than I did the best I could. Suck it up. I think it's healthy to let your kids know that I tried. We all tried. I failed. I want you to be better than me. I want you to be a better me than I was me. So that's mine. Pass it on to you.
So, my father, being raised in the church and stuff like, so we were always at church. We were the family that would struggle, get up Sunday morning to go to church, and there was this argument, fight, whatever it would be, and then you get in the car and try to drive to church and everything, get out and everything's hunky-dory, rosy.
Just like y'all.
Yeah, you guys don't do that. I know you've learned. And so we get there, and so I was always in church and always with that and stuff. But I noticed my father, he could work the foyer or the door so incredibly well. I mean, there was none better than him. He really, I mean, he would make people they come in through the door, felt so loved and so cared for, like, we are glad you're here. Come on. I mean, there was this switch, this magical moment. I'm like, how do I get to be that individual that comes through the door? But I learned how to work the door really well. I can be up front. I mean, if you were here before, I can sit up front or stand and do that. But I was one that was born and raised that you know when to stand, sit, put your hands together, do the role, but be empty and hollow. And so as it kind of went through that, then I didn't tell this for the first service, is that my dad thought it was important for me to go to camp.
Mine too.
And they would send me to, and I think maybe it was a deal with, hey, get him out of the house, I don't want him here. But it was important for them and me to go to camp, and I would go to Nazarene camp up there in Prescott, and I loved that place. I was telling Michelle, we were sitting there this morning, and I said, the reason I took this ceiling down, that when we got this place, we had remember that vault ceiling? And it means so low and stuff like that. And I pulled it out, and I saw this wood, and I go, it reminds me of the tabernacle. And there was just holy moments for me there. But that was because my dad and mom said, hey, we need you to go to camp. We think it's awesome, because my dad went to camp there, right? And so in a roundabout way, he was trying to show me the love of Jesus by, let's go to camp. That's why I'm a big fan of camp, brother. You know? And there's moments that he shined so really well and made me a better dad in that sense. Michelle was telling me between service, she goes, you did a great job, but you need to tell him how bad a great dad you are. And I go, I don't think I am. That's my personal view. I don't think I'm a great dad.
Yeah.
But I will say this, my boys love to hang out with me.
Yeah.
They love to go trips and go, we'll travel all over together, and we travel well. And I'd go, I would never travel with my folks. I'm not going to do it. Because I always expect this little goofiness that's going to happen, and I don't want to embark in that stuff. So, so my boys are still doing it. My oldest helps lead worship in a couple churches north of Seattle. And he's so funny. He's called me a couple times. I go, "How did church go today?" And he goes, "Well, I put my best Brian Wilson on today." And I'm like, "Oh, that's just funny." My other two boys, they help out, but they love to be more in the background type of thing. They don't want to be out in front. But my middle son, he's married, he's the only one with kids, and he's a better dad than I ever was. I look at that and I go, "Who told you that?" It wasn't me. He's such a godly dad, and it loves on these kids, and just they're blossoming. I'm like, wow. Oh my goodness. So they called me and they said, "Hey, would you guys come and watch the kids for a couple weeks?"
Nice.
So we're going in July here. We're taking off going to July. And all of a sudden I get started wearing, I hope I don't get flashbacks of, because they do it so well. And I don't want to screw that up. So, but it's good.
My turn. So as I explained in first service at 9 o'clock, this is tough for me because I feel like being a dad is one of the things I'm most insecure of and at times most secure in, if that makes sense. Because one of the things that Rusty said, being a pastor, especially when you're full-time ministry, your schedule is flexible until it's not, if that makes sense. There are times that we have crisis, something that we got to, vacate everything and go focus on the situation, the person, whatever it is. But until then, so I get to make like award things that nobody cares about, right? And I'm usually one of the only dads there. There's a bunch of moms and me, yay for those awards and stuff like that. And I get to make practices and things like that. And I'm very passionate and I put a lot of effort into being a dad. And I saw it done well and I saw it done poorly. Especially being in numerous foster homes, right? Exposed to father figures through that situation too. And one of the things is that I feel like I fell short. I'll get to that. But one of the things that I feel like, because I'm so passionate about it, I have a heart for kids that look for that father figure. I have a heart for kids, and I have for years. I've been in ministry 20-something years. And I have a heart for kids that maybe don't have a great father figure and be the example. Like later on today, our Father's Day dinner, which I get to barbecue. That's right. I'm so excited. If you know me, man, grilling is one of my top 4, I don't know, maybe top 3 passions. But I will have people who see me as a father figure at that table that don't necessarily live in my house and I didn't raise and stuff like that. And that means a lot to me. But one of the things that I felt like my dad kind of fell short is, no fault to his, I felt like they didn't push me. I felt like it was like, well, you were born to a drug-addicted prostitute, so if you're not homeless and addicted to drugs, you're good. And I feel like where I understand that, right? It's true in one aspect. It could be worse. But I had to, so because I didn't really feel pushed, I was very mediocre at everything. Grades barely passable. I don't even tell my football players my GPA because I put them way up here. I'm not telling you guys what I had. But education, like everything, sports, I was a very okay musician. I just felt, so that in turn, as we've already heard from these guys, it caused me to want to push my kids. And although that's good and there's areas that we should, right? We should provoke spiritual growth. There's a lot of things that are good about pushing, wanting them to be their best. But I feel like with me, I put expectations on them that might be too tough for them at times, right? There's a time and a place, and I'm not good at knowing when the time or the place is. So that's just kind of my thing. So I do feel like that's probably where I fall short as a dad. I push them, and then mom can baby them, but it's my job to make you better. And I do feel like there's positive there, right? There's not ill intent there. It's not like I'm trying to drive you crazy. I know I do. The only kid that's in here that lives in my house now is our Derek that lives with us, and he is like a son now, and so he gets to see this, and he gets the great expectations, and now used to be Coach Leon, now it's Dad. Good luck. I don't know. I think I love that I get to be a dad, and I love that I get to be a dad to other kids, but it's not something I take lightly. One of the stories I shared earlier was a young lady named Paige about 15 years ago was like, hey, can I call you Dad? And she was in my youth group, and she didn't have a dad, single mom most of her life, and I was like, no, don't do that. I don't want that responsibility. Like, I don't want that expectations. I'm still focusing on these kids that I have here. I don't want to let you down, right? But the reality is that I think, I'm placed in these kids' life for a reason, and whether it's like showing them what a father could be, or a man of God and a great relationship should look like.
Same question from First Service.
Oh, man. Okay. Say it and then I'll answer.
Okay.
I don't want to
So I was asking I said, from 0 to 6, you had a portion of not feeling wanted. I think we've all experienced that. What was it in the switch that happened for you that for your kids and youth group kids, you're such a massive influence on this campuses over here. What is that switch?
Going through it once, I didn't think I would cry the second time. I don't know that there's a switch. All I know is that I felt that way for years, even after being adopted. Even though I get a call almost weekly by my dad, and he never ends a phone call without saying, I'm proud of you. Without him saying that I'm a better dad than he was, a better pastor than he is. But the reality is, because I felt unwanted before, I don't want any young person to feel that way. And there's situations that, like even, Derek, the situation where he was trying to find a house, somewhere to stay in town when his family had to leave, I never wanted him to feel unwanted. And I don't want him to feel unwanted in my house. And I don't want football players. And I mean, if you guys would have seen the picture of, what was it, almost a month ago, that we had a big barbecue here, and there was like 80 kids, students, 6th to 12th grade, just being themselves, hanging out. Like, they're all different, and they all feel wanted, and I think that's important.
Don't you think that's that relentless pursuit of the Father, that love that he just lavishes, just goes, I can want to tell you I love you, I love it, and it just, all three of us, we've experienced that in such an incredible way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. There's a level of pride we all carry for our kids. We're all very, very proud of our kids, and I'm far from the perfect dad, and I've made a bajillion mistakes and probably continue to do them, but I'm very proud of my kids. And the adults, my kids are grown. Chris has got some grown, some little. But I think as a parent, I think in the end, that's where we just want to be proud of our kids, and no matter what they do. I mean, whatever they're doing, whatever directions they're going, I just want them to know I'm their dad, and I'm proud of them, and I love them, and I'm here for them, and I'll support them, and as a dad of grown kids now, that feels good. Yeah. That feels really good to. My kids like to hang out with me now too.
It's amazing.
They want to go on vacation with me. I'm like,
it's shocking.
Really?
Isn't it?
Like, you want to? Well, yeah, you pay. That's just,
Is that?
Yeah. No, my kids are awesome, and they do pay. They are really good about going. Do you need me to? And I go, yeah. Get that credit card on over here. So thank you guys. Give them a hand. Appreciate you guys today.
Thank you, brother.
We're gonna close with communion in just a second. I just wanna tell you my favorite dad story in the Bible. It's probably not the one that most pastors will tell, but it's the one I love the best. It's found in Luke. Jesus is telling parables. He tells a parable of a lost coin, a lost sheep, and finally a lost son. And it's the parable of the prodigal son. If you know the story, the father has great wealth, and he has two sons. And the youngest son comes and says, "Give me all my money. I want to get out of here." And he goes to the foreign land. He spends it all wildly, and he eventually runs out of money. And he's eating with pigs, Jesus says, and he comes to his senses and he thinks, I know my father's servants have it better than I do, so I'll just go home and I'll tell him I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry to God, I'm sorry to you, and I'll go to work for my father. At least I'll have, a place to stay and some food. But what he doesn't realize is the father, Jesus is telling the story, and the father in heaven has been watching for him day after day after day. He's been looking. And as the son comes home, the father sees him in the distance and he runs to him. He's an old man, he runs to him. And again, traditionally, it would have been embarrassment for an old man to run. It would have been disgraceful for an old man to run. But he runs to him and he puts his arms around him. Before the son can even speak, he's embracing him and he's saying, I got you. Welcome home. And the son confesses, and he goes, no. You're not going to go to work. We're going to throw a party because you're my son. We're going to kill a fatted calf, put the ring back on your finger, put the robe on you. You're my son. And I think of God the Father as this perfect Father who just looks for us, when we get lost, when we drift, when we sin, when we forget who we are, and when we turn to him, he runs to us. Welcome back. That's the best dad, by the way. It's God the Father who would send his one and only Son into the world on our behalf to die for us, to redeem us and restore us back into the family. Why don't you stand? I'm going to pray, and you're free to come forward and take the elements. There's also elements in the back. And then return to your seats so you can take those at your seat. Father God, as we celebrate Dad today, and many of us, maybe we don't know where our dads are. Maybe our dads are gone. Maybe we didn't have a great relationship with our dad. Maybe things went really crazy with our dad. Some of us still have our dad. Some of us have kids who call us dad. Father, help us to turn to you on this Father's Day as the perfect Father. A good Father in heaven who looks down on us with this unending love and grace and mercy. And I know you're so proud of us when we turn to you and when we look to you because we're your kids. Thank you, Father. As we take this bread and this cup, we remember what your Son did for us to bring us back into the family, God, to redeem us and restore us and make us new.